Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into another life, your life, as you open your eyes in the dim glow of a rural Japanese morning, long before anyone imagines your name will echo through centuries. Cool mist rests on the wooden beams above you, the light smell of damp earth drifting in through the cracks. A rooster somewhere outside sounds like it hasn't had its coffee yet, and you stretch beneath a thin blanket, feeling the chill roll over your skin. This is the beginning of your path, even though right now you're mostly concerned with not bumping your head on the low ceiling. And yes, you probably won't survive all of what's coming if we're being historically realistic. But fortunately, this is bedtime storytelling, so you're protected by the power of cozy narration. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing the little constellation of sleepy humans all around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push aside the old wooden door of your childhood home, the air crisp and carrying the scent of rice fields stretching toward the horizon. This village, your village, is the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where gossip travels faster than horses, and where neighbors assume your business is their business. You walk barefoot across the yard, mud pleasantly cool between your toes, and hear your mother sweeping, her rhythmic strokes steady as a metronome. She glances at you with that familiar combination of tenderness and "don't track mud inside again." You pretend not to notice the second part. The world around you is simple, quiet, a little worn at the edges. It's the late 1500s, the Sengoku period, a time of constant conflict. But out here, in your small corner, life hums along with the calm persistence of people who've learned to make peace with uncertainty. Mainstream historical fact incoming. This was a time when Japan was fractured into competing domains, each ruled by powerful warlords. People in small villages like yours mostly tried to stay out of the way, though rumors of battles drifted in as easily as the wind. You're still young, too young to fully understand war, but old enough to sense that the world beyond the hills is shifting like a restless animal. Some mornings, traveling monks pass through, their robes dusted from long roads, offering blessings or occasionally selling trinkets that may or may not have been worth the coin. Once, a monk gave you a tiny carved amulet shaped like a frog. He claimed it brought good luck. You carried it for a week, then lost it somewhere near the stream. Whether it was lucky or not remains a mystery, but historians still argue whether figures like that monk helped spread new ideas, gossip, or just overpriced talismans. Your father, or the man raising you, depending which scholar you ask, works as a village official of sorts, though the exact nature of his role is a bit of a historical shrug. Fringe tidbit? Some accounts suggest he may have been a skilled martial artist, teaching a local style called tori-ru. Others hint that he simply liked to claim expertise after a few cups of sake. Either way, he teaches you the basics of movement, how to place your feet, how to breathe, how to stay grounded even when everything around you tilts. You mimic his demonstrations in the yard, sometimes swinging a wooden stick with all the seriousness of a child convinced they're already a living legend. Birds scatter, your mother sighs. A neighbor ducks out of the way because you really haven't mastered spatial awareness yet. But in these laughs and missteps, something inside you sharpens. Mornings become a rhythm. Fetch water from the stream, watch sunlight shimmer on its surface, wonder how it would feel to follow it all the way to wherever it ends. You chew on a simple breakfast, usually something involving rice, and occasionally something that looks suspiciously like yesterday's rice, and then help with chores. All the while, a quiet itch grows inside you, the kind that makes you stare at distant mountains a little too long. You don't know it yet, but this restlessness will become the heartbeat of your life. On certain evenings, you sit near the fire, listening to elders tell stories of heroic warriors, skilled swordsmen, and battles that shaped regions. They embellish details the same way people add spice to food. Some parts for flavor, some because memory is fuzzy. But the effect is the same. You feel a pull toward that world. It's not the violence that draws you, but the idea of honing yourself into something precise and steady, like a brushstroke on calm parchment. As you grow, the village begins to feel smaller, its boundaries tightening around your curiosity. You walk paths you've memorized, stepping over familiar stones and crossing worn wooden bridges. You start swinging your wooden sword at reeds near the riverbank, practicing over and over until your hands blister. And when they blister, you keep going because something about the rhythm is comforting. Maybe it's the way repetition turns your thoughts quiet. Maybe it's just that beating up reeds is free entertainment. Your father notices your intensity. Some days, he watches you with a proud nod. Other days with a raised eyebrow, probably wondering if you should also practice not breaking household objects with accidental swings. But he teaches you anyway. Stances, balance, the importance of timing. You learn that strength alone means little without patience, a lesson that will, in time, become the spine of your existence. Village life isn't all training and introspection. There are festivals with lanterns bobbing like fireflies, loud flute music you pretend to enjoy, and neighbors who comment far too loudly on how tall you've gotten. Children your age run across rice paddies, laughing, daring each other to leap over irrigation ditches. You try once, misjudge, and end up soaked to the waist. One of your 3 required jokes. The ditch definitely won that duel. You dry off in the sun, listening as older villagers gossip about the latest clan conflict happening somewhere far away. The war is constant in this era. In the village, it feels like a distant storm, loud but separated by hills and luck. You wonder what it's like out there, what those warriors see, how they carry themselves. You imagine yourself among them, not out of glory-seeking bravado, but because something calls to you, a desire to understand the world beyond chores and muddy ditches. A few times each year, armed men pass along the outskirts of your home. Ronin, or vassals traveling between lords, armored in pieces that look both impressive and uncomfortable. You watch them with wide eyes, feeling the crisp slide of awe in your chest. One of them sees you staring and gives a nod, acknowledgement, approval, or perhaps just recognition that children stare at literally everything. Still, you'll remember that nod for a long time. Slowly, the idea forms. You can't stay here forever. You wake one morning, the mist heavier than usual, clinging to your hair as you step outside. The mountains in the distance seem closer, their outlines sharp and inviting. You feel it again, that invisible tug forward, as if the world has hooked you by the collar. You don't leave yet, but the seed is planted. Your life in this quiet village gives you stability, but it also shapes the contrast that will define the rest of your journey. The peace here becomes the backdrop against which your future choices stand out like brushstrokes on fresh paper. Each choice bold, deliberate, and eventually legendary. For now, though, you remain in this small home, this small life, forging the earliest edges of a blade that will one day reshape the stories told around countless fires. You wake to the sound of rain ticking against the old wooden roof, each drop a tiny reminder that the world outside keeps moving, even when village life seems stuck in its quiet loop. The air smells of wet soil and green leaves, clean in a way cities centuries later will charge money to bottle. You sit up slowly, stretching your arms toward the low beams again, because hitting your head once per morning is more than enough. Today feels different. Not because anything dramatic happens, you're living in boring history for sleep after all, but because you can feel the restlessness settling deeper into your bones. You step outside and watch fog drape the rice paddies like a soft blanket. A few neighbors are already awake,
murmuring about the weather and complaining about aches they've had since they were 12. You give them a polite nod, all while your mind wanders far past the hills. Lately, you've been catching yourself staring at the path leading out of the village. You don't quite know why, only that the horizon seems to be calling your name like an impatient friend tapping their foot. This wandering urge isn't unusual for your time. A mainstream historical fact. During the Sengoku period, many young men left their villages to seek work, training, adventure, or sometimes just a better lunch. The world beyond was chaotic, sure, but it was also full of opportunity, especially for someone with a developing talent for swinging sticks at alarming speeds. You walk the familiar path to the river, noticing how the world hums around you. Insects waking in the grass, the faint grunt of an ox in the distance, the chill of water lapping at your ankles. You practice a few strikes with a branch you snapped from a tree earlier. It's uneven, heavy in all the wrong places, basically the worst training weapon imaginable. But you swing anyway, finding the rhythm. 1-2, 1-2. Your breath matches the cadence until the world narrows to movement and sound. A frog hops onto a nearby rock and watches you with the judgmental calm only amphibians possess. You give it a solemn nod, because this is your life now, seeking validation from wildlife. Joke number 1, you're pretty sure the frog thinks your form needs work. As the days pass, your mother senses the shifting in you. It's subtle at first, longer walks, fewer words at dinner, that faraway look you get when the wind carries the scent of something unfamiliar. One evening, she sets down a bowl of rice, studies your face, and sighs softly. Mothers have an uncanny ability to notice things you think you've hidden. She doesn't try to stop what's coming. She's known since the day you first picked up a stick, squinted like a tiny philosopher, and announced your intention to figure out the world. She just hoped the world might be kind to you. Your father, or guardian, depending on which historian you subscribe to, responds differently. He tests you. A sudden strike during training to see if you're alert. A long lecture about responsibility, disguised as a story about a fisherman who loses all his nets. Sometimes he says nothing at all, but hands you a heavier practice staff, raising one eyebrow as if challenging you to complain. You don't. You just keep practicing. One afternoon, you walk further than usual and find yourself on a winding road that leads into the forest. Light filters through the leaves in bright, shifting patterns. The air is cool, calming. Birds call out warnings to one another about the large human trespassing through their territory. You breathe in deeply, savoring the stillness, and feel something inside you settle, then expand. This, you think, is what freedom smells like. A fringe tidbit many people don't know: Musashi was rumored to have been exceptionally tall for his time. Whether this is an exaggeration or not, historians still argue whether his imposing presence played a role in his early reputation. In your current second-person reality, you're definitely on the taller side of village folk, which means ducking under doorways is now a lifestyle. You sit on an old tree stump and watch dust motes drift like tiny lanterns in the sunbeams. For a moment, you imagine yourself living in the forest, training, meditating, eating berries you definitely can't identify. You picture future wanderers stumbling upon you and whispering, "Ah, yes, the mysterious tall guy who lives in the trees." You shake your head. Maybe not that. But the idea of leaving, of walking roads lined with unknown faces, of seeing towns where no one knows your name, of discovering whatever lies beyond those hills, keeps returning. It becomes harder to ignore. The feeling isn't loud, not dramatic. It's more like a soft itch at the back of your mind, one that grows each time you hear villagers gossip about distant conflicts. One night, lying on your futon, you listen to the wind slipping through the cracks in the wall. Your room is dark, quiet, except for the occasional squeak of the floorboards settling. You stare at the ceiling and let the idea drift through your thoughts. Maybe it's time to go. Not forever, not dramatically, just to see, to wander, to learn. Your father senses it before you speak a word. The following morning, he hands you a simple travel bag. Not much inside, just what you might need to survive the first few days beyond the village. He doesn't say this is permission, he doesn't say it's encouragement, but he does say, if you go, walk with intention. Don't drift like a leaf, which, honestly, is fancy dad language for don't do anything stupid. Your mother stands at the doorway, trying not to fuss. She tightens your robe, brushes non-existent dust from your shoulder, and tells you to write, even though letters are rare, slow, and often delivered by someone who was going that direction anyway. You promise you will. You probably won't, but the intention is there. You sling the bag onto your shoulder. The weight feels strange, light, yet full of possibility. Your wooden practice sword rests at your hip, more symbolic than practical, but comforting in its familiarity. You step beyond the village boundary and glance back only once. The fields sway in the breeze, golden and soft. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys. Everything looks exactly the same, but you're not the same. You take your first step onto the open road, then another and another. The world feels impossibly big, the sky wide above you, the future uncertain in a way that's both thrilling and unsettling. Your sandals thump on packed dirt, sending little puffs of dust into the air. The sound becomes a rhythm, a quiet drum marking the beginning of a journey that will stretch far beyond anything you or the sleepy frog or your mother or your skeptical father can imagine. You breathe in deeply, letting the scent of new earth, new trees, new opportunities settle into you. You are now a wanderer. Not yet the swordsman you'll become, not yet the legend people whisper about, but a restless young soul following the tug of roads that curve into the unknown. And somewhere ahead, through miles of forests, towns, and training grounds, the first threads of your destiny are already waiting. You follow the road until it narrows into a winding trail, the dirt packed by countless travelers who walked it long before you ever dreamed of leaving home. The morning light drips through the trees like warm honey, and you adjust the strap of your small travel bag as you walk, feeling a mix of excitement and the kind of nervous curiosity you try very hard to pretend you don't have. Your wooden practice sword taps lightly against your hip with each step, reminding you that even though you don't look like much yet, you're trying very hard to be someone worth remembering. Your first duel doesn't happen with any dramatic buildup. There's no intense music, no thunderstorm, no slow motion moment where leaves swirl around you in a cinematic dance. It happens because two bored young men near the edge of a village mistake you for someone they can impressively defeat in front of each other. To be fair, you do look like a wanderer who hasn't figured out what he's doing yet, because that is exactly what you are. You stroll into the village just before noon. The sunlight bleaches the packed dirt road to a pale tan, and the air smells faintly of grilled fish. You're already hungry, because wandering builds an appetite, and you've learned the hard way that travel food is basically sadness wrapped in rice. As you head toward a small stall, one of the young men steps in front of you, sword slung confidently across his back. His friend watches from behind, nodding like a man who fully believes his buddy is a future samurai prodigy, despite all evidence to the contrary. "You there," the first man says, puffing out his chest. "Where are you from?" You blink at him, unsure how to explain that you're from a place so small it has exactly zero relevance to this conversation. Instead, you shrug. He narrows his eyes, clearly interpreting your shrug as a direct challenge to his honor. And because human beings are endlessly creative in their ability to escalate situations unnecessarily, he places a hand on his sword. A mainstream historical fact. Informal duels were extremely common among young warriors in the Senkoku period. Skill was often proven through spontaneous testing of ability, and bragging rights traveled far, especially in towns where boredom was basically at pandemic levels. Let's see what you've got.
You consider declining. Truly, you do. But then he smirks, the kind of smirk that universally triggers poor decision-making in people your age. So you nod, draw your wooden sword, and step forward. The crowd, meaning 5 people and 1 very invested chicken, gathers around the 2 of you. The duel is over quickly, surprisingly quickly. You don't even do anything fancy, you just move. His first strike is wide, and you dodge it by instinct, tapping him lightly on the shoulder with your wooden blade. A gentle correction. Please reconsider your life choices sort of tap. But he stumbles back anyway, shocked. His friend gasps like someone just spoiled the ending of a story he wasn't reading. The young swordsman tries again. Same wide strike, same imbalance. You slide to the side, tap him again. His expression shifts from confidence to confusion, and you feel a tiny spark of something warm inside you. Not pride exactly, more like recognition. Maybe you're better at this than you thought. When the match ends, the crowd murmurs approval. The chicken loses interest and wanders away to pursue more important poultry matters. The 2 young men glare at each other, their pride slightly bruised, but they bow politely before letting you go on your way. You continue down the road with a small smile tugging at your lips. You didn't come here to fight, but that little moment feels like a sign. A very encouraging, slightly ego-boosting sign. As you walk, you replay the duel in your mind. The movements, the rhythm, the angles. Why did it come so naturally? Had all those clumsy swings at reeds actually taught you something? You realize that training in the village, though humble, gave you a deep foundation, one built on instinct and necessity rather than rigid drills. But you're smart enough to know this is only the beginning. A fringe tidbit. Some old manuscripts mention that Musashi's early duels were not always elegant. A few record him as being wild, unpredictable, even scrappy. In your case, that translates into a style that isn't pretty yet, but effective. Later that afternoon, you reach the edge of a different town and sit near a well, sipping water and rubbing your sore hands. A merchant approaches, squinking at you like he's trying to decide whether you're a harmless wanderer or someone who might accidentally break his stall by leaning on it too aggressively. "You're traveling alone?" he asks. You nod. He studies your wooden sword. "Be careful, there's been trouble along the roads. Bandits, ronin, people with nothing to lose." Historians still argue whether these stories were exaggerated, but a few travelers swear they saw a group harassing passers-by not far from here. You thank him for the warning, though inside you feel a strange mixture of nerves and anticipation. Not because you're reckless, but because there's a part of you that understands something important. Every danger is also a teacher. That evening, you find a quiet hill overlooking the town and sit beneath a crooked tree. Its branches creak gently in the wind, and the fading sunlight paints the valley gold. You practice movements from memory, wide cuts, low stances, footwork meant to stabilize you on uneven ground. Sweat drips down your neck as mosquitoes begin plotting your demise. You swat them away, but they return, fully committed to the all-you-can-eat plan. Joke number 2, you're convinced the mosquitoes are the deadliest warriors you've faced so far. You keep practicing long after the sun sinks behind the mountains. Your body aches, but the repetition feels grounding. Each strike hones something inside you, something patient, something focused. You've never been formally trained, not in the way castle warriors are, but your intuition is sharp. You adapt quickly. You learn from mistakes in real time. You pay attention to how your body shifts, how your feet anchor into the dirt. You sleep lightly that night, wrapped in your cloak beneath the stars. Crickets chirp in the tall grass, and the distant hoot of an owl echoes across the valley. You drift in and out of dreams, some about home, some about faceless opponents,
Some about the frog who judged your form earlier. He's now your imaginary rival in training. The next morning, your journey continues. More roads, more forests, more unfamiliar faces. Each village teaches you something new. How to negotiate for food without overpaying, how to find shelter before rainstorms hit, how to identify inns by the lanterns hanging outside. You meet travelers, some friendly, some aloof, some carrying stories that sound a little too dramatic to be true.
Along the way, you test your skills quietly. A small duel with a cocky stable boy, you win. A spar with an older fighter traveling with a merchant caravan, you lose, but barely. A session practicing strikes against a boulder, which, unfortunately, does not lose. Joke number 3, the boulder remains undefeated, and you learn the important lesson that rocks make terrible training partners. Through every success and failure, something becomes clear. You're not looking for glory. You're looking for understanding, for discipline, for a shape your life can grow into. And slowly, the world begins shaping you back. These early duels aren't about winning. They're about awakening the part of you that senses movement before it happens, the part that reacts faster than thought, the part that blends instinct with intention. By the time you reach the next province, your steps feel steadier, your grip more certain, your restlessness still there, but now it has direction. You walk onward, knowing the real journey is only beginning. You follow the road out of the last quiet village and into a landscape that feels heavier, older, and marked by the passing of soldiers. The air here carries more than the scent of pine or damp earth. It carries tension, a kind of hush, like the land itself is waiting for someone to make the next move. You tug your cloak tighter around your shoulders as you walk, feeling that subtle shift, that quiet reminder that the Sengoku period is not just a backdrop, it's a living, breathing storm. Even if the narration is soft and sleepy, the world around you is anything but. You cross a narrow wooden bridge, the boards creaking under your feet. Beneath it, a small stream flows, gentle, clear, and completely unaware it's positioned in a war-torn countryside. The road beyond winds through hills dotted with abandoned homes and burnt-out fields. You pause for a moment, letting your gaze sweep over the empty shacks. Some still lean stubbornly against the wind, as though waiting for families who might never return. A mainstream historical fact floats into your mind. Villages were frequently evacuated or destroyed as armies moved through, claiming land, supplies, or simply trying to prevent enemies from using certain routes. Farmers often fled at the first rumor of incoming troops, leaving behind everything except what they could carry. You can feel that truth in the silence around you. You walk on, the only sound your sandals brushing the dirt. Even the birds seem hesitant to sing here. After an hour or so, you spot a plume of smoke rising over the next ridge. Not thick enough to be a wildfire, but too steady to be accidental. You approach carefully, hand resting on the wooden practice sword at your side, even though you know it wouldn't help much against actual weapons. Still, it's better than nothing, and it makes you feel grounded, even if that's mostly imagination. At the top of the ridge, you see it, the remnants of a battlefield. Not a recent one, but recent enough that the energy still clings to the earth. Armor plates lie scattered across the ground, cracked and half buried in mud. Spears stick out of the soil like uneasy grave markers. A few broken banners flutter weakly in the wind. You swallow, your throat suddenly dry. There are no bodies. Someone has already taken care of that. But the absence only makes the scene feel stranger, like the ghosts all stepped out for lunch, but will be back soon. You walk slowly through the field, your steps soft, respectful. You aren't scared, exactly, but you're aware of standing in a place where people fought, where people fell, where choices carried weight you've never experienced. This isn't the measured sparring of a village,
or the playful bravado of traveling youths. This is real, heavy, final.
A fringe tidbit some storytellers whisper about Musashi's youth claims that he once crossed a battlefield shortly after a major conflict, collecting abandoned weapons to study how they'd been broken or bent. Whether that's literal truth or a dramatic embellishment, historians still argue whether young warriors often learned from the remnants of war in this way. But in your quiet walk now, you can imagine how such a story might have begun.
You crouch beside a broken yari, its wooden shaft snapped clean in two. You run your fingers over the splintered edge, feeling the violence preserved in its fibers. You imagine the clash, the moment of impact, the hands that held it. Then you gently set it back down. As you rise, you notice the smoke you spotted earlier is coming from a small camp at the far end of the field. A lone figure sits beside a fire, stirring a pot with deliberate calm. The man looks up as you approach, his expression unreadable, his posture relaxed but alert, very much the vibe of, "I can tell you're here even if I don't look at you." You stop a respectful distance away.
"You shouldn't wander through places like this," he says without judgment. "I'm just passing through," you reply. He studies you for a quiet moment, then gestures toward the fire. "Sit. The world is loud enough without young travelers starving on the road." You sit, grateful for the warmth. The stew smells simple but comforting. Root vegetables, herbs, and something that might be fish or might be optimism. Hard to tell. The man is older, 40s perhaps, which in this era is practically venerable. His hair is streaked with gray, and he carries a daisho resting beside him with the ease of someone who has been holding swords longer than you've been alive. He stirs the pot again before speaking. "You walk like someone who's training," he says. "Not a soldier, not a farmhand, someone searching." You blink, surprised at being read so easily. "I'm learning," he nods. "The world teaches better than any master if you're paying attention, and it teaches harshly if you're not." The two of you talk for a while about the roads, the shifting alliances, the villages emptied overnight. He doesn't name his lord or his allegiance, and you don't ask. In this age, politics are as delicate as rice paper and twice as easy to tear. As the sky dims, he shares a bowl of stew with you. You thank him, and he waves it away. "Eat. You'll need strength if you're walking these lands." You do as he says. It tastes better than you expected. Simple, warm, grounding. He watches the flames as he speaks again. "Historians still argue whether young men like you belong on these roads," he says with a faint smile. "Some say it's foolish, others say it's destiny." You consider that. Destiny sounds big, heavy, overwhelming, but you don't say that out loud. After a while, he hands you something wrapped in cloth. You open it and find a short wooden bokken, not a fancy one, not polished or decorated, just sturdy, balanced, made for training by someone who clearly knows what good training feels like. "I can't give you real steel," he says, "but that will teach you more than the branch you've been swinging." You feel your ears warm. You hadn't realized he noticed the makeshift weapon you've been carrying, but of course he did. You thank him with a bow deeper than any you've given so far. He nods once, accepting it, then tells you to rest near the fire. He'll take the first watch. You don't argue. Your body is tired, and the warmth lulls you quickly. As you lie down, gazing at the stars barely visible through the haze of smoke, you wonder who he is. Ronin, veteran, wanderer, someone who has seen too much, someone who recognized something in you. When you wake at dawn, the fire is dying, the man is gone, and only a folded scrap of paper remains where he sat. You open it to find a short message. Walk with purpose, not fear. You fold it carefully and tuck it into your pack. As you cross the ridge into the next valley, the land reveals more signs of war. Burned out farms, empty watchtowers, protective walls left half built. These sights don't frighten you.
but they shape you. They remind you that strength isn't just about duels or wooden swords. It's about understanding the weight of conflict, the cost of choices, the reality of the world you're choosing to walk through. And somewhere inside you, a steady resolve forms. Not loud, not boastful. A quiet promise to grow, to learn, to survive, to shape your own path through a world that isn't gentle. You walk onward, the new bokken at your side, your steps firmer than before, your senses sharper. You're no longer just wandering. You're becoming. Dawn creeps in over the mountain ridge, and you're already awake, doing that thing where you pretend your blanket is a small hill you're climbing, just to make getting up feel more epic. You stretch, quietly, trying not to disturb the calm of the training compound. There's a coolness in the air, the faint scent of ash from last night's hearth, and you can almost hear the earth itself taking a slow breath. As Miyamoto Musashi, you rise early not because anyone forces you to. There's no strict dojo hierarchy breathing down your neck yet, but because your muscles seem to whisper, hey, let's not waste daylight. And honestly, your muscles are right more often than you'd like to admit. You step outside where the sky is still soft, pale, and undecided about its color. Birds chatter in the distance, not that peaceful, romantic kind of chirping, but the chaotic, we're late for our bird jobs kind of sound. You jog lightly toward the clearing where your childhood friend waits. You two meet every morning, no matter what, like unspoken ritual. And ritual is important. Not all battles are fought with blades. Some are fought with consistency. That's what your foster father, your uncle as you think of him, says often enough for it to have become a permanent bumper sticker in your mind. The clearing isn't exactly glamorous, more like a modest patch of packed dirt, sprinkled with broken twigs and grass protesting its own existence. But it's your training ground, and over time it has earned that sacred quality anything well used starts to develop. Your friend is already there, swinging a wooden sword, giving you that smug, I beat you here eyebrow lift. You roll your eyes, raise your mock sword, and the two of you breathe in sync before the first strike hits. The clash is dull but satisfying, a wooden thok that echoes through the trees. You step, pivot, circle left, matching the movement of your childhood buddy. Your footwork is sharper than his, something he teases you for. Show off, he loves to mumble mid-spar. But it's only because you've studied how animals fight. The mainstream historical fact is simple. Musashi was known for unorthodox training methods and didn't formally align with a single established school. The quirky tidbit? You've been observing the farm goats and the way they square off, shifting their weight forward right before impact. You may or may not occasionally imitate them. And your friend may or may not occasionally baa at you when you do. This is the kind of supportive environment you're thriving in. You strike low, he parries. He lunges, you deflect. Your movement begins to feel less like fighting and more like a conversation, albeit the kind where sentences are formed with wrists and ankles instead of words. Historians still argue whether these early sparring habits of yours came from instruction, instinct, or pure stubborn improvisation. But you can feel it. This is where your foundation is set. Every morning feels like carving a groove into destiny, stroke by quiet stroke. Eventually, the sparring winds down, not because you're tired, but because your friend throws himself dramatically onto the grass, flailing like a defeated beetle. "I yield," he groans. "The goats win again." You poke him in the ribs and drop beside him. The ground is cool, and sunlight begins to paint everything gold. You both lie there, panting, staring at the sky like two philosophers who forgot their own theses. Your conversations drift. Sometimes you talk about sword techniques you've made up. Sometimes you talk about traveling someday, crossing mountains, visiting bustling towns, maybe even seeing the ocean again. And sometimes you talk about food, because even future legends get hungry. Today, it's about dumplings. You're convinced dumplings are the universe's greatest invention. He thinks it's miso soup. This debate could destroy nations, honestly. So perhaps it's good you're both still children. After a while, you sit up, brushing dirt from your clothes. Tiny stones cling to your knees like needy little barnacles. You dust them off and stand, stretching until your spine cracks with an alarmingly loud pop. That early morning stiffness again. You wonder jokingly if you're aging too fast, at a ripe 12-ish. Maybe you should start a skincare routine or something. Goat milk moisturizer? That thought will haunt you later. Your uncle calls from the house, voice carrying easily through the crisp air. Time for chores. Time for more training. Time for life to continue pushing you gently but firmly forward. You and your friend gather your wooden swords and stroll back, talking about absolutely nothing of consequence, and yet everything that matters. Because these moments, the slow walks, the shared jokes, the ease of familiarity, are what anchor you. Back at the house, the morning unfolds with a steady rhythm. You help with sweeping the yard, stacking firewood, trimming bamboo, all the simple tasks that somehow make you feel connected to the world. There's something meditative about it, like each movement resets your thoughts. Your uncle watches you work with a kind of quiet pride that doesn't need to be spoken. He gives you another pointer on posture, then another, and then, just when you think you're done, one more. He can't help it. Mentorship oozes out of him like sap from a tree you're not supposed to lean on.
Eventually, your friend leaves for his own chores, but not before giving you a half-hearted wave that says, "See you tomorrow for another beating." You wave back, already looking forward to it. The day continues with lessons in balance, breathing, and how to move your body as though intention and action are the same thing. It's slow, repetitive, calming, even as it strengthens you in ways you can't yet measure. By midday, your arms ache pleasantly. You take a moment to sit under the shade of the old pine tree near the gate. You can smell resin, earth, and the faint tang of iron from the tools stored nearby. Your uncle joins you, handing you a cup of tea without comment. You sip, letting the warmth spread through your chest, and he finally speaks. Consistency makes the warrior. Flash makes a story. You nod, storing that line for later, maybe for years. As clouds drift lazily across the sky, you realize that these days, these slow, repetitive, oddly comforting days, are shaping you just as much as any dramatic battle ever will. And you're beginning to enjoy the rhythm. You're becoming someone who embraces the quiet grind, the subtle progress, the simple companionship. You may one day walk a path of intensity, but right now, life feels like a soft drumbeat guiding your steps. Before you head inside again, you take one long, deep breath. The world smells like pine and possibility. Your muscles hum with effort. And somewhere in the distance, your friend probably just lost another argument with a stubborn chicken. Life is good. The sun rides high overhead, tilting the shadows just enough to make the world look slightly off balance, like someone nudged the scenery a few inches to the left when you weren't looking. You stand at the edge of your uncle's workshop, wooden practice swords stacked neatly against the wall like tired soldiers waiting for their next shift. Today is different. Your uncle has decided it's time for you to start crafting your own training tools. Not a full sword, not yet, but something more personal. Your own bokken, shaped by your hands, your sweat, your patience. He hands you a block of red oak that looks suspiciously like a long, heavy loaf of bread. You heft it, feeling the weight settle into your palms. A warrior should know his tools, your uncle says, not unkindly, and he should know how to make them. A mainstream historical fact slides naturally into place here. Musashi would later become known not just for his fighting ability, but for his artistry, painting, calligraphy, carpentry, and for insisting that mastery came from understanding both creation and destruction. Today is your first taste of that philosophy. You settle on the low stool, chisel in hand, and begin shaving away the excess wood. Chips fall like pale feathers,
some sticking annoyingly to your clothes. Every so often, you blow at the surface, which only results in sawdust flying directly into your eyes because physics hates you personally. Your uncle chuckles under his breath, not offering help, because this is one of those learn the hard way moments. You blink rapidly, tearing up like you're emotionally moved by the sheer beauty of woodworking. Slowly, the shape begins to emerge. Not elegant, not symmetrical, and certainly not anything a master craftsman would brag about, but yours. Your grip, your balance, your intention. The wood warms under your touch, taking on the slight sheen of your effort. There is something undeniably grounding about creating an object that will accompany you through the next stage of your training. You're forming a relationship with this future weapon, the way some people bond with houseplants. Gently, awkwardly, with a lot of trial and error.
As you work, your uncle tells you stories, little snippets of philosophy wrapped in casual sentences. He mentions the schools of swordsmanship spreading across the provinces, their styles as varied as the personalities who teach them. He explains the classic two-sword technique known as Niten Ichi Ryu, and though you don't yet know it, this will someday become your signature. He doesn't push the idea on you, he just plants the seed. There are many ways to move through the world, he says, running a thumb over a blade he's sharpening. Some people follow tradition. Some create new paths. You glance down at your hilariously lopsided bokken. Yeah, you might be one of the latter. As the afternoon stretches into something softer and lazier, you take a break to stretch your aching hands. The air is thick with the smell of sap and warm wood, almost sweet. A cicada rattles somewhere overhead, sounding like a tiny alarm clock that desperately needs replacing. You step outside and roll your shoulders, feeling that pleasant burn of muscles doing their job. And right as you consider lying dramatically on the ground to become one with nature, your childhood friend appears again, this time balancing a basket of vegetables his mother probably bribed him into delivering. When he sees your half-finished bokken, he squints. "Is it supposed to look like that?" he asks. You shrug with the delusional confidence of someone who absolutely does not know what they're doing. "Obviously," you reply. He nods, pretending to be impressed. You're both excellent at supporting each other's questionable life choices. As you return to carving, the conversation shifts to travel again, both of you dreaming about leaving your small community someday. You wonder aloud what cities must smell like, if markets are as loud as people say, if the food is strange and exciting. Your friend leans against the doorframe, saying he wants to see a castle up close. He's convinced there's a secret room in every castle where officials store embarrassing poetry they wrote when they were 12. A quirky tidbit you throw into the exchange. Some samurai did indeed keep personal diaries full of melancholy poems, though historians have yet to confirm whether any were as cringe as your friend claims. Historians still argue whether Musashi's early wanderlust sprang from restlessness, ambition, or simply wanting to win more spars than the local countryside could offer. Eventually, your bokken takes on the correct shape. Well, correct-ish. It's functional. It won't give you splinters. It vaguely resembles a sword instead of a mutated canoe. You run your hand along the smooth grain and feel something settle into place inside you. Pride, maybe, or just relief that it didn't break in half. When your uncle inspects it, he nods once, an approval so subtle you almost miss it. But your heart does a tiny victory dance anyway. Now comes the part he does help with, coating the wood. He warms a mixture of oil and resin, and the scent fills the workshop. Earthy, rich, comforting, like the feeling you get when you remember you still have snacks hidden under your futon. Together, you brush the mixture onto the wood, watching it deepen in color, becoming more solid, more real. When it dries, your uncle hands it to you. Now, he says,
Let's see how you move with something you made yourself. You step outside again, the late day sunlight turning everything honey gold. Shadows stretch across the ground like long, lazy cats. You wrap your hands around the bokken, testing its weight. It's heavier than the communal training swords, which surprises you. Your uncle raises an eyebrow. Creation teaches you responsibility. A tool you make becomes a mirror. It shows you your flaws and your strengths.
You take a stance, feet grounded, shoulders loose, grip firm. You inhale slowly, letting the air gather in your lungs like a tide rolling in. Then you step, pivot, strike, a fluid motion built from hours of watching goats, sparring with your friend, and being corrected by your uncle until you wanted to melt into the ground. But this time, it feels different, tighter, more intentional, as if the sword is syncing with your heartbeat. Your uncle watches silently. When you finish a sequence, he nods again, twice this time, which by his emotional standards is basically a standing ovation. You're beginning to see, he says softly. The path is shaped by your own hands. As the sun dips toward the horizon, you feel something calm but powerful settle over you. You're not a master, you're not a warrior, you're a kid with a lopsided wooden sword and a desire to keep moving forward. And yet, it feels like enough. You slide the bokken onto a rack, the wood still faintly warm from your hands. Tomorrow morning, you'll test it in sparring. Maybe your friend will mock its weird curve. Maybe you'll accidentally smack a tree with it. But tonight, you feel quietly accomplished. You've made something lasting, something that will travel with you, through sweat, through training, through all the unknown miles ahead. And as you head inside for the night, it's comforting to think that the future isn't a place you fall into. It's something you carve, slowly, patiently, one stroke at a time. Morning arrives with a kind of slow, silver light that makes everything feel like it's been dusted with the faintest layer of dreams. You blink awake, stretch, and immediately wince because, fun fact, crafting your own bokken apparently uses muscles you didn't know existed. Your shoulders complain, your hands tingle, your lower back mutters something rude. Still, there's a little spark in you, an excited flicker that overrides every ache. Today, you're taking your handmade wooden sword into the real training field for the first time. You step outside, the air cool and clean, carrying the faint scent of damp earth. The ground still holds pockets of nighttime chill. Somewhere behind the trees, the river whispers over stones, steady and unbothered. Your uncle is already awake, because of course he is, sitting on the porch with a cup of tea like some serene, wise background character whose only job is to judge your technique. When he sees you, he gives the slightest nod toward the training clearing. No lecture, no theatrics, just go. You retrieve your bokken from its resting place, fingers tracing the uneven curve of the wood. It's charmingly flawed, like a potato that tries its best to resemble a sword. But it's yours, carved by your effort, shaped by your stubbornness. As you walk toward the clearing, your steps are deliberate. You're trying not to think about all the ways this could go terribly wrong. What if it snaps? What if it wobbles? What if you trip and accidentally invent the world's first slapstick samurai routine? Your friend is waiting for you again, already bouncing on his heels with the chaotic energy of someone who ate breakfast too fast. When he sees your bokken, his eyebrows shoot up. "Wow," he says, and you can't tell if he's impressed or concerned. It's definitely a sword-shaped object. You thank him politely, because validating your questionable craftsmanship is an act of friendship. The warm-up begins. Stretches, footwork drills, breaths rising into the chilly morning air like tiny ghosts trying to escape. Today, everything feels heavier, more grounded. It's not anxiety exactly, more like the sensation you get right before lowering yourself into a hot bath. Anticipation mixed with mild existential dread. Then your uncle appears at the edge of the clearing, not entering the space, just watching,
observing, judging silently like a hawk who took a vow of minimalism. Which means today is important. You take position across from your friend, feet steady, shoulders relaxed, hands gripping the bokken you shaped from an uncooperative chunk of oak. A mainstream historical fact fits naturally here. Early Japanese sword training emphasized kata, formalized sequences practiced repeatedly to ingrain movement into the body. And today, you're stepping closer to that discipline. The first clash is soft but solid, thok. Wood meets wood. The vibration hums up your arms, different from the communal practice swords. Familiar, but personal. The weight is unique, the balance slightly off, but that's good. Perfect tools don't teach you as much as imperfect ones do. You step, pivot, breath in, breath out. Your bokken arcs through the air with surprising smoothness, like it remembers being carved for this exact motion. Your friend blocks, stumbling back a little. "Whoa," he yelps. "Relax, I didn't sign up to get murdered today." Technically, he did, but you decide not to say that out loud. As the spar continues, something begins to settle inside you. A rhythm, a quiet thread weaving your breath, movement, and intention into one fabric. You're not mimicking animals today. You're not trying to impress your uncle. You're simply moving, letting the bokken teach you what it needs. A quirky tidbit drifts through the narrative is a description of young samurai in training practicing swings with anything they could find, including bamboo poles, wooden ladles, and in one odd case, what might have been a broom handle. So your slightly lopsided bokken? Pretty on brand for history. Your friend lunges, you sidestep, the ground shifts under your feet. The sun rises higher, brushing gold across the treetops. Time stretches in that particular way it does when you're fully absorbed in something, when you forget the world outside yourself. Then, during one especially enthusiastic exchange, your bokken connects with your friend's sword at just the wrong angle and crack! A tiny splinter shoots off the side. You freeze, he freezes, the world freezes. Even the birds, presumably, freeze. Then your friend says, "Well, it lasted longer than I expected." You both collapse into laughter. Relief floods you so fast your knees almost give way. Your uncle clears his throat, not disapprovingly, but not indulgently either, just reminding you that he exists and has opinions. He steps forward, picks up your bokken, and inspects it carefully. "It held," he murmurs. "It held because you shaped it with intention. Not skill, not yet, but intention is the seed." He returns it to you with a slow, thoughtful nod. And that nod feels like someone handed you a small trophy engraved with, "Nice job not failing catastrophically." Training continues, but something shifts, not in your technique, but in your awareness. You notice how the wind moves through the branches, how your friend's stance telegraphs his next motion, how your uncle watches not the strikes, but the transitions. At one point, he steps beside you and adjusts your posture with a single tap to your elbow. "A sword is not a tool for strength," he says. "It is a line, a direction. You follow it." He demonstrates a movement, slow, fluid, almost lazy. But the air changes around him, as if acknowledging the precision of someone who has spent a lifetime refining the invisible. It's a glimpse into what mastery looks like, soft, unforced, inevitable. You try the movement. You don't match it, of course. Yours looks like a confused crane trying to stretch after a long nap. But your uncle nods anyway. Progress isn't beauty, it's presence. As midday approaches, your friend eventually taps out, dramatically laying flat on the ground like someone reenacting their own tragic opera. He groans, "Explain to me how your homemade sword weighs more than my entire future." You poke him with your toe. "Maybe you should train more." He responds, "Maybe you should carry me home." You absolutely do not. When he finally leaves, you practice alone. Slow swings, controlled breaths. Your bokken grows warm again, shaped by repetition. Historians still argue whether Musashi's early insights into movement emerged from formal instruction or improvisation. But here, in this quiet clearing, you can feel something small and foundational taking root, something that will grow, slowly but unshakably, into the core of your identity. Later, you walk back toward the house. The air is thick with the smell of lunch being prepared, rice steaming, vegetables sizzling. Your uncle murmurs something about your footwork improving. You pretend you didn't hear him to avoid getting overly emotional. But inside, you feel it. Not pride exactly, something gentler. You've begun to understand the path ahead, and for now, that's enough. The sound reaches you before the person does. An unfamiliar footstep on the gravel path. Too light to be your uncle, too steady to be your friend, and definitely too early in the day for surprise visitors unless fate has decided to spice things up. You pause mid-swing, bokken raised above your shoulder. The breeze holds its breath with you, rustling the pine needles just enough to make you feel like nature itself is leaning in to eavesdrop. Then he appears, an older traveler, dressed in worn but respectable garments, a bundle tied neatly at his back. His hair is streaked with gray, in that distinguished, I know too much but don't brag about it way. His posture is relaxed, too relaxed for someone stepping into a training yard uninvited. And there's a calm in his eyes, the kind that usually belongs to people who've seen things, survived things, and probably have a collection of philosophical one-liners ready to deploy at any moment. Your uncle steps forward before you can say anything. They exchange formal greetings, bowing with the bare minimum of ceremony required by politeness. The traveler's voice is soft, pleasant, like someone who spent many mornings practicing not to sound intimidating. He introduces himself, gives his family name, and says he's been journeying through the region teaching swordsmanship to those who ask, and sometimes to those who don't ask but really need it.
Your eyes widen slightly. A wandering swordsman, a real one, not the tall tales villagers whisper about in steakhouses, not the dramatic figures drawn in picture scrolls, but an actual living example of the life you've daydreamed about while chopping wood or perfecting your footwork. You stand a little straighter, partly out of instinct, and partly because if this is destiny knocking, you'd prefer to look less like a kid who tripped over a broom 5 minutes ago.
The visitor's gaze shifts to you. His expression softens, but not in a patronizing way, more like he sees something familiar. Your stance is young, he says, but your spirit is old. You're not entirely sure whether that's a compliment or a gentle warning that you need more sleep, maybe both. Your uncle gestures for you to continue practicing while he talks with the traveler, but you can feel their eyes on you as you move. So naturally, your brain picks this exact moment to forget which foot goes where. You do your best, lifting the bokken, inhaling, swinging in controlled arcs. The kind of movements you've repeated so often that your muscles know them by heart. Even if your mind is currently running in circles screaming, "He's watching, he's watching, he's watching." During the Edo period, it wasn't uncommon for seasoned swordsmen to wander, sharing techniques or challenging local fighters, sometimes to test their own skills, sometimes to teach, sometimes simply to experience new styles. This wandering swordsman fits that lineage perfectly. A man shaped by motion, guided not by duty to a single school, but by curiosity for every blade that moves differently. Eventually, your uncle calls you over. This is Master Okada, he says, a man who carries many lessons. His tone implies this is someone worth listening to, a lot. Master Okada studies your bokken first, because no true swordsman looks at the warrior before looking at the tool. He runs a thumb along the grain. You made this yourself, he says. It isn't a question. You nod. He smiles. Good. A sword should know its wielder. He steps back and gestures. Show me a strike. Oh, just that, no pressure. You take your stance, grounding your feet like your uncle taught you. Breath steady, shoulders loose. You lift the bokken and execute a clean downward cut. Not perfect, not elegant, but honest. Master Okada hums thoughtfully. Again. You do it again, and again. After the 12th repetition, you start to suspect his life philosophy is 90% repeat this until enlightenment happens. But something shifts with each swing. Your balance adjusts, your center lowers, your control tightens in ways you can feel even if you can't articulate them. After a while, he holds up a hand. Your cut is straight, but not alive. A blade must follow intention, not habit. Then he steps forward and demonstrates. His movement is slow, deliberately slow, but somehow terrifyingly precise. The air seems to fold around the arc of his strike, as if aware that someone just rewrote its job description. He doesn't use force. He doesn't need to. It's all breath, posture, inevitability. You swallow, hard. Try it, he says. You attempt the same arc. You fail, spectacularly. Your bokken wobbles like it's questioning its own life choices. You almost trip over your own foot. You hear a bird in the distance make a sound like it's laughing at you. But you try again and again. And Master Okada doesn't correct you harshly. He nudges your elbow, taps your shoulder, adjusts your wrist with a feather-light touch. Your body moves too fast for your mind, he says. Slow down and everything will catch up. A quirky tidbit dances into the moment. Some early sword schools believed the spirit of a sword strike traveled ahead of the blade itself, reaching the opponent before the actual blow, which was either deep metaphor or an early form of strategic trash talk. Historians still argue whether practitioners literally believed in sword aura physics or were simply trying to explain the psychological effect of a confident strike. You practice until your arms ache, until the ground beneath your feet shows faint grooves from your repeated steps, until sweat gathers at your temples and trickles down your neck, until even Master Okada seems satisfied. You learn quickly, he says, not because you're gifted, but because you're present. You soak in the compliment like a dry sponge tossed into a river. Lunch is shared under the shade of the porch. Simple rice, pickles, and tea. Master Okada tells stories in that gentle, meandering style of people who have traveled far enough to lose the urgency of youth. He speaks of duels avoided rather than fought, of mountains where he trained alone for months, of a village where children mistook him for a wandering storyteller and asked him to read picture books. Your friend arrives mid-meal and sits beside you, trying to act nonchalant while stuffing rice into his mouth at alarming speed. When he learns who your visitor is, he nearly chokes. You thump his back. He glares at you like it's somehow your fault he inhaled lunch too enthusiastically. The afternoon becomes a blur of new drills, new footwork patterns, new questions that bloom in your mind like wildflowers you can't quite name. You can feel yourself learning, not memorizing steps, but understanding movement, understanding yourself. Before leaving, Master Okada places a hand on your shoulder. Continue to shape your path, he says, not by following others, but by learning from them. His eyes linger on you for a moment longer, as if trying to read your future. Then he smiles, softly, knowingly, and turns down the road, his figure shrinking slowly into the golden haze of late afternoon. You stand in silence long after he's gone. Not because you're sad, but because something inside you has shifted again, quietly, deeply, like a river choosing a new direction beneath the surface. The world is larger than you thought, and suddenly you want to meet all of it. You step away from the drifting smoke of the battleground, letting it dissolve behind you like a dream you're already forgetting.
The night air cools your skin as you descend a narrow path through the pines, and even though your legs ache, your mind feels strangely unanchored, free in a way it hasn't been since you first picked up a bokken. You've survived one of the most chaotic clashes of the era, yet here you are, quietly wandering toward a new chapter without any grand celebration or parade.
Honestly, if life worked like the movies, someone would at least give you a medal or a dramatic monologue with swelling music. But no, just you, pine needles, and that one owl who insists on judging your life choices. You can't please everyone.
Your footsteps crunch through the forest floor as the world slowly returns to its ordinary rhythms. After months of marching, fighting, and following orders barked by people who often didn't know left from right, it finally hits you. You're tired of being told what to do. You crave something more open, more fluid, something shaped by your own hands. That lingering sense of autonomy, or maybe stubbornness, nudges you toward the path of a ronin, a masterless samurai. Historians still argue whether you consciously chose that identity out of pride or necessity, but either way, the label fits like a slightly oversized coat, comfortable, but with plenty of room to grow into. And with newfound freedom comes newfound curiosity. As dawn creeps in, you make your way toward a small village a few miles away. Years of war have taught you to expect burned timbers and abandoned huts. But instead, you find a place that feels miraculously untouched. Clean water trickles from bamboo pipes. Women hang freshly washed cloth in neat lines, fluttering like small white banners. A fisherman tugs calmly at his nets, while a group of kids chase each other with the kind of reckless joy only children and overly caffeinated adults have. You almost forget you're a trained warrior. You feel more like a traveler drifting through a painting. Somewhere inside you, a softer part stirs. Only slightly, don't get sentimental. You slip into the village as casually as someone who definitely doesn't have multiple enemies trailing behind them. A kindly old woman, noticing your dusty clothes, offers you a bowl of miso soup. You thank her, and as you sit under the eaves of her home, the steam rises into your face, carrying hints of seaweed, fermented soy, and something warm you haven't tasted in years: peace. The mainstream historical fact here: villages like this often served as neutral spaces, small, self-sustaining communities that continue day-to-day life no matter which warlord happened to be screaming for dominance at the moment. Japan's peasants were astonishingly resilient, maintaining routines through chaos like the world's earliest practitioners of, "I can't control the world, so I'm just gonna keep minding my business." You watch the villagers go about their chores and feel an unexpected tug of inspiration. Maybe you need to understand people better, not just how to defeat them, but how they work, how they live, how they keep going. And so begins your habit of drifting from town to town, observing, learning, and occasionally performing a small act of kindness that surprises even you. One time, you help reinforce a farmer's fence. Another time, you teach a boy the fundamentals of holding a wooden sword. None of this is particularly glamorous, but it all feels meaningful, grounding you in a calm rhythm between the storms of your past and future. A quirky tidbit floats into your mind, something you overheard from a traveling merchant. Apparently, in one mountain region, villagers believed that placing a tiny wooden sword above their doorway would ward off ill spirits and nosy neighbors. Whether it worked or not, no one ever questioned it. Superstition or early home security system? Hard to say. The world is full of strange habits that make more sense the longer you roam. Despite the tranquility, you can't entirely escape your reputation. Rumors follow you like an overly loyal stray cat. A few bold warriors, eager to make a name for themselves, track you down. Most challenges happen in quiet, grassy clearings with no audience, except those judgmental crows that always seem invested in your personal development arc. You accept each duel with calm precision, and afterward you continue your journeys without lingering. You don't need monuments, you just need movement.
Still, a part of you wonders about your purpose. The war gave you structure. Adversaries gave you a direction. Now, wandering gives you possibility. But possibility is a bigger, scarier thing to hold. Historians still argue whether this period of your life was one of spiritual awakening or simply youthful restlessness. The truth is almost certainly a blend of both, much like how miso soup somehow tastes both light and profoundly savory at the same time.
You drift north into another region where villages cling to the edges of rice paddies that shimmer like sheets of glass beneath the morning sun. Farmers bend at the waist, tending the delicate seedlings. The scent of damp earth mingles with the buzz of insects. It's the kind of sensory combination that slides right into your mind and refuses to leave. Soothing, repetitive, almost meditative. Honestly, if you had a smartphone, you'd probably record this as a 10-hour ambient background video titled Tranquil Rice Fields for Sleeping or Studying. You spend the next several days quietly observing the farmers' movements, how they glide through the fields with practiced ease, how they share their workload without needing many words. You learn that strength isn't only about clashing swords. Sometimes it's about patience, balance, and harmony with the world. This realization fits neatly into your emerging philosophy, like a puzzle piece that finally clicks. One evening, as the sun dips behind the hills and the frogs begin their nightly chorus, you sit on a low wooden bridge, watching the water ripple below. You don't feel lost. You don't feel found. You simply exist, and that is enough. It's a rare, calm state, like catching your breath in the middle of a long journey. And you know more challenges await, but for now, your story is a quiet stream flowing toward whatever comes next. You lean back, stretch your tired limbs, and let the night wander around you. The world is vast, and you're learning to move through it without fear, without rush, and occasionally with a small joke about how the frogs sound like they're arguing about taxes. Life is balance. And somehow, this wandering chapter becomes one of the pillars that shapes the legendary figure you're slowly becoming. One village at a time, one quiet moment at a time. The morning greets you with a soft, golden haze that filters through the trees, brushing your face with warmth and a faint tickle of dust in the air. You rise slowly, muscles still sore from yesterday's sparring and the continuous march of travel. Even so, there's a calm in this moment that you've begun to crave. The serenity that comes from moving through the world unhurried, aware of every step, every sound, every scent. You pull your cloak around your shoulders and begin walking toward the small village where you intend to rest today. The path winds through low hills and shaded groves, and each step brings a gentle rhythm to your breathing, like nature itself is composing a lullaby just for you. Birdsong drifts lazily through the air. The soft clatter of leaves under your sandals punctuates the quiet, and the faint smell of wet earth mixes with distant smoke from a nearby homestead. Even in the chaos of the Sengoku period, there are these pockets of life that persist, quiet, ordinary, unassuming. You can almost hear the whisper of time itself, telling you that not every moment must be a battle, and not every day must be legendary, and that is a gift. As you enter the village, you notice the simplicity of life here. Children chasing each other with sticks, chickens wandering freely in the dirt, and the occasional woman kneeling to tend her vegetable patch. The mainstream historical fact of the day, villages like this were microcosms of resilience, maintaining routines even as armies move through the countryside, burning and rebuilding in cycles that seemed endless. The quirky tidbit? One family insists on playing a game every morning where the first person to spot a crow as the sky gets to dictate chores for the day. It's completely arbitrary and somehow feels profoundly meaningful. You find your way to a small, quiet tea house where the owner, an older man with an unhurried demeanor, offers you a bowl of steaming soba. The warmth seeps into your hands, the broth a delicate mix of earthiness and subtle sweetness.
You watch the villagers pass, trading goods, exchanging quiet greetings, and you feel a light tug of admiration. They live in rhythm with the land, adapting without complaint, accepting what comes without the dramatic tension that seems to follow soldiers like you wherever you go. Your thoughts wander to the lessons you've gathered during your wanderings: balance, patience, observation. Today's reflection is about observation in its purest form, seeing without judgment, noting without interruption. You watch a young boy carefully lift a bucket of water, spill just enough to giggle at his own mistake, and then start over. There's no rush, no fear, just a subtle persistence that mirrors the philosophy you've been cultivating in your own practice. After the meal, you wander to the outskirts of the village where rice paddies stretch into the distance. Water shimmers across the fields like fragmented mirrors, reflecting the sky in a way that makes the world seem infinite. You dip your fingers into the edge of the irrigation channel, feeling the cool current slide over your skin. The sensation grounds you. Here, there are no enemies, no expectations, just movement, repetition, life itself. You consider how much of your later swordsmanship philosophy might have been shaped by these moments, when subtle observation of natural rhythms merged with careful repetition. Historians still argue whether Musashi's strategy of timing and flow originated in formal study or from years of absorbing the world around him like a sponge. Perhaps it is both. As the day stretches onward, you begin practicing footwork beside the paddies. The soil is soft, yielding, and your movements leave small impressions that the water slowly smooths over. You breathe in deeply, listening to the distant chatter of villagers, the rhythmic hum of insects, and the gentle rustling of reeds. The repetition of your strikes and steps becomes almost meditative. There is a quiet humor in imagining that the water bugs are your audience, silently critiquing your stance, yet offering no commentary. You allow yourself a small grin. Even warriors need their audience, real or imagined. Late in the afternoon, you encounter a traveling monk making his way down the dirt path. He carries a small bundle of scrolls and incense, moving with deliberate care. You bow politely, and he offers a serene nod. The monk speaks briefly about the importance of timing in both martial and spiritual practice, how rushing is often the enemy, how patience amplifies power. You nod along, absorbing his words with the quiet hunger of someone slowly piecing together an understanding of the world. A fringe tidbit he shares. Some monks practice sword forms using a single shadow as their partner, perfecting movement in imitation of reflection and light. It seems almost absurd, yet you can sense the truth hidden in the symbolism. As twilight approaches, you find a small hut where the village allows travelers to rest. The air is filled with the scent of cooked rice and drying wood, warm and comforting. You sit outside for a moment, feeling the day's sun fade across your shoulders and down your back. The birds have gone quiet, leaving only the gentle croaking of frogs and the occasional rustle of leaves. Here, in this soft moment of transition from day to night, you feel a quiet contentment. Not triumph, not victory, just the steady, reliable pulse of life. You take out your wooden sword, examining it in the dimming light. Your practice today has been gentle but insightful. You notice the way your hands have learned subtle adjustments, grip, angle, flow, without conscious thought. Small victories, quiet victories, that accumulate into something larger. You trace the edge of the wood, feeling its smoothness and the faint warmth from hours of motion. It is a companion, a teacher, and a reflection of your growing discipline. As the final light disappears, you tuck your bokken beside you and lean back on the low wooden step, letting the cool night air soothe your muscles. The stars begin to pierce the darkening sky one by one, and the quiet of the village settles around you like a protective blanket. Here, with the distant croak of frogs, the whisper of wind, and the steady rhythm of your own breath, you feel an intimacy with the world that is rare and precious. You are alone, yet completely connected. By the time sleep begins to tug at your eyelids, the lessons of the day, patience, observation, quiet persistence, have taken root. The world beyond the village can wait. Tomorrow will bring more movement, more encounters, more subtle understanding. For now, the night holds you gently, and you allow yourself to drift in its quiet embrace, ready to continue the journey.
The dawn arrives softly, spilling pale gold over the horizon and slipping quietly between the wooden beams of your lodging. You stretch, feeling the slight stiffness that accompanies another night on a straw mat, and take a slow, measured breath. There's a calm that accompanies these mornings, a gentle recognition that today is yours to shape, not dictated by the whims of warlords, not choreographed by the expectations of others. You move with intention, allowing the early light to brush your skin, tracing the contours of your shoulders and arms, warming the muscles still settling from yesterday's practice. You gather your belongings and step outside. The village is awake, though still muted, the activity gentle and deliberate. Children weave between houses, trading whispered jokes and laughter that echoes faintly against wooden walls. Chickens cluck and peck, oblivious to the larger world beyond the village boundaries. You notice the simple harmony of daily life here and let it fill your chest with an almost musical calm. Mainstream history notes that wandering samurai often relied on such villages for sustenance and shelter, their presence tolerated because the villagers recognized both the need for protection and the neutrality of these travelers. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind. Some villagers insist that a wandering samurai's shadow can predict the weather, though no one can agree on how this works. Historians still argue whether these stories were serious superstition or playful exaggeration to pass long evenings. You walk toward the edge of the village, where the rice paddies shimmer in the early light, reflecting the sky like broken glass. Your feet sink slightly into the damp earth, grounding you with every step. You pause and observe the farmers at work. The rhythmic bending and straightening, the steady movement of hands through water and mud, the focus of attention and care in every motion. You notice how the water moves around their feet, ripples forming and disappearing in delicate patterns, and you allow yourself a small, almost imperceptible smile. There's a lesson here. Repetition breeds understanding, and patience allows mastery to grow quietly, invisibly. After a brief stretch, you take your bokken in hand and begin a series of slow movements, arcs and steps, honed through countless hours of solitary practice and instruction from your uncle. The wooden sword feels familiar, but today it feels alive in a new way, almost as if it knows the rhythm of the world around you. Each swing carries intention. Each step follows the natural flow of the earth beneath your feet. A small bird lands nearby, watching you with bright curiosity, its head cocked to one side. You imagine it as your most patient audience, silently witnessing your progress. There's something meditative about moving in this quiet space, where only your breath, your movements, and the gentle ambient sounds exist. As the sun rises higher, you hear a faint rustling behind you. Turning, you see a fellow traveler approaching, a young swordsman, wide-eyed and tentative, carrying a wooden sword almost as tall as he is. He pauses at a respectful distance, nodding in greeting. You return the gesture, sensing a mixture of excitement and nervousness in his posture. He asks if he may practice alongside you, and you nod. You understand that today will bring not just physical repetition, but shared learning. Humans are social creatures after all, even wandering ones. The quirky tidbit reappears. In some regions, young swordsmen were said to practice with shadows as if they were partners. Today, your shadow has gained a real companion, equally clumsy, equally determined. The young swordsman mirrors your movements, and you adjust slightly to accommodate his rhythm, slow and deliberate, ensuring that neither of you gets hurt. There's something satisfying about teaching through demonstration, about moving in tandem rather than competition.
Historians still argue whether Musashi's philosophy of learning from all encounters, friends, strangers, or opponents, was innate or cultivated through years of observation. But today, you experience a glimpse of it firsthand. Every swing, every step, every shared glance teaches something beyond mechanics: focus, empathy, patience, and adaptability. Time seems suspended as you practice together. The rice paddies shimmering with reflections of the sky, the breeze carrying the faint scent of wet earth and growing crops. The young swordsman falters occasionally, losing balance, but you offer gentle corrections, guiding him through foot placement, wrist alignment, and breath control. Your own movements sharpen in the process, refined by the effort of articulating technique and adjusting to another's tempo. By now, the village seems to fade into the background. Only the rhythm of motion, breath, and the soft clatter of wooden swords against soil remains. Eventually, you pause, both of you standing in the soft warmth of the morning sun. Sweat glistens on your foreheads, and you breathe deeply, feeling the satisfying ache of muscles used well. You share a quiet nod of acknowledgement, recognizing that this small session, unremarkable in the larger narrative of a wandering samurai, has imparted lessons that neither of you will forget. The mainstream historical fact resonates again. Musashi was known not just for his duels, but for mentoring and influencing those he met, shaping technique and philosophy in subtle, enduring ways. By late morning, you and your companion sit beneath a grove of trees, sharing water and food. Conversation drifts lightly from technique to travel stories to the mundane rhythms of village life. There's a comfort in these exchanges, a reminder that even in a life of wandering, connection, however brief, enriches the soul. Your companion eventually thanks you for the lesson and departs, leaving you with a renewed sense of purpose and the gentle warmth of shared experience. As the day stretches toward noon, you take a solitary walk to the edge of the paddies, watching sunlight ripple across the water. Your bokken rests lightly against your shoulder, and you reflect on the quiet accumulation of knowledge. Repetition, observation, mentorship, and the subtle lessons drawn from simple human interactions. The world feels vast, yet intimate, and for the first time today, you sense the intricate threads connecting movement, reflection, and life itself. By mid-afternoon, the village quiets, and you retreat to a shaded nook beneath a large tree. The air is thick with warmth, punctuated by the occasional hum of insects. You close your eyes, letting your mind drift over the morning's lessons and the gentle rhythm of life. Even as a wandering samurai, the smallest moments, the patterns in rice paddies, the sway of reeds in the wind, the laughter of children, begin to define you. They are as much a part of your path as any duel, any training, any challenge. And as you sit in that stillness, you realize that this wandering, seemingly aimless period is quietly shaping the very foundation of the warrior and thinker you are becoming. Strength is not just in the swing of a blade, it's in attention, patience, and the openness to learn from every encounter. Tonight, when sleep finally claims you, your dreams will carry these subtle lessons, preparing you for the long road still ahead. The morning rises slowly over the horizon, spilling a soft, honeyed light across the countryside. You wake with a quiet awareness of the day stretching before you, limbs still warm from yesterday's movements, but tingling with the promise of new lessons. There's no rush. Your steps are measured as you gather your few belongings, slipping the bokken into your shoulder strap. The air is crisp, carrying the faint scent of dew and earth. You inhale deeply, letting the cool morning fill your lungs and ease the residual tension from the hours of practice. Today's journey is quieter, reflective, a day for observation as much as for action. You descend the gentle slope from the village and follow the narrow path along the riverbank. The water gurgles softly over stones, carrying an almost musical quality, while birds stir overhead, their wings slicing through the early light.
Your footsteps make a subtle rhythm against the earth, each one reinforcing the quiet harmony you feel settling into your chest. You pause occasionally to observe the way sunlight glances off the ripples, how the shadows of reeds dance across the water's surface, how insects skim along the currents without disrupting the flow. There's a meditative quality to the world at this hour, a gentle reminder that motion and stillness coexist, each giving meaning to the other. A mainstream historical fact settles into the rhythm of your day. Musashi was known for keen observation, often noting the smallest details of both his environment and his opponents. You realize, as you watch the water flow, that strategy is not only in the swing of a sword, but in understanding the subtle cues that life provides. The quirky tidbit for today comes from a tale a wandering merchant once shared. In certain regions, villagers believed that water flowing over smooth stones could teach a warrior patience, suggesting that by mimicking its unhurried persistence, one could achieve balance in both body and mind. Historians still argue whether Musashi actually embraced such superstitions or simply adapted them metaphorically into his teachings. You continue your walk along the river until the path opens into a wide meadow, the kind that glows faintly with wildflowers swaying lazily in the breeze. You kneel to touch a cluster of blossoms, the petals soft under your fingertips, absorbing the delicate patterns of nature that are both ephemeral and enduring. This quiet observation becomes a lesson in timing and patience, the way a leaf tilts under sunlight, the manner in which a butterfly hovers and moves without rushing. These subtle gestures, unnoticed by many, carry wisdom for someone attuned to the world. As midday approaches, you encounter a small group of farmers tending to their livestock. They notice your approach and pause, polite but wary of a wandering swordsman. You bow lightly, offering reassurance through gesture rather than words. One farmer nods, and the tension dissolves into gentle smiles. You take a moment to study their methods, the careful handling of the animals, the rhythmic feeding, the interplay of coordination among the workers. There's a tacit lesson here. Efficiency is not about brute force, but harmony, subtle adjustment, and anticipation. You rest beneath the shade of a lone tree at the meadow's edge, sitting cross-legged with the bokken across your lap. You practice slow strikes and blocks, letting your movements sync with the gentle rhythm of the breeze. Each swing is measured, deliberate, a study in flow and intention rather than speed. You notice how the bokken responds differently under varying grips and angles, how subtle shifts in your posture affect balance, and how the body remembers repetition more accurately than the mind can consciously dictate. A young boy from a nearby farm approaches, curious and cautious. He watches your movements silently, his eyes bright with a mixture of awe and eagerness. You beckon him closer and demonstrate a simple stance, encouraging him to mimic your posture. He wobbles initially, laughter breaking the tension, but gradually his stance improves under gentle guidance. There's something quietly profound in teaching another, in seeing the reflection of your effort in someone else's progress. It's an echo of Musashi's later philosophy, that learning is amplified when shared, not hoarded. After the lesson, you stand again and continue your walk toward the hills in the distance. The path climbs gradually, and the exertion brings a faint, satisfying ache to your legs. You pause periodically to survey the landscape, valleys dotted with villages, rivers threading through meadows, distant mountains wrapped in mist. The perspective reminds you of the broader world beyond immediate concerns, of the infinite possibilities and challenges that await. Each visual detail, each sensory input informs the decisions you will make both in practice and in life. By late afternoon, you arrive at a secluded grove near the hilltop, where a quiet spring trickles among moss-covered stones. You kneel to drink and wash your hands, feeling the cool water awaken your senses. You sit on a flat rock, letting the sounds of the grove, the rustle of leaves, the hum of insects, the occasional call of a distant bird wash over you.
This pause is essential, a moment of introspection that grounds your body and mind. Here, the repetitive lessons of travel, training, and observation coalesce into a gentle understanding of rhythm. Life, like a sword stroke, is most effective when guided by awareness and patience rather than brute force. As the sun tilts toward evening, you practice one final series of swings with the bokken, letting the flowing arcs trace invisible lines through the golden light. Each movement is slower, softer, but more precise, a reflection of everything absorbed over the day. The sensation is meditative. You are both teacher and student, observer and participant, grounded yet fluid. The world quiets around you, as if granting approval for the effort invested in subtle mastery rather than overt display. Finally, you settle beneath the branches of a sturdy oak, the day winding down into soft twilight. The air carries the scent of earth and wildflowers, mingling with the faint wood smoke of distant village hearths. You close your eyes, letting the rhythm of your own heartbeat, the gentle breeze, and the soft rustle of leaves lull you into a reflective calm. The day has offered quiet lessons in observation, patience, shared experience, and mindful motion. You feel the deep satisfaction of progress, not the triumph of victory, not the thrill of confrontation, but the subtler, enduring satisfaction of growth. The world is vast, yet each step, each swing, each mindful observation is a thread weaving into the fabric of your path. And as the stars begin to pierce the twilight sky, you allow yourself to rest, absorbing the gentle, persistent rhythm of life around you, ready to continue the journey tomorrow. The day unfolds with a quiet elegance, as if the world itself is aware of your slow, deliberate approach to life. You wake to a soft, diffused light filtering through the canopy above, your body already attuned to the rhythm of the morning. There's no urgency, no clamor of war drums or barking commanders, just the gentle chorus of birds and the occasional rustle of leaves. You stretch carefully, feeling the familiar ache in your shoulders and forearms from yesterday's practice, and you allow it to remind you that growth is cumulative, not instantaneous. Even discomfort has a lesson to teach. You pick up your bokken and begin walking toward the nearby hills, the path winding gently upward. Each step sinks slightly into the earth, grounding you as the soft breeze carries the scent of damp grass and pine resin. The stream nearby hums quietly, its water threading over stones in a rhythm that seems almost deliberately instructive. Mainstream historical fact: Musashi was known for traveling through a variety of terrains, adapting his technique to both hills and plains, rivers and open fields. Today, the landscape is your teacher, guiding posture, footwork, and balance through subtle feedback from the ground and environment. In one remote village, it was believed that stepping too heavily on the soil could disturb the spirits of the land, leading to a poor harvest or, worse, bad luck in duels. While you doubt the veracity, it provides a convenient metaphor. Every step carries consequence, intentionality matters, and even small movements ripple through the environment in ways you may not immediately see. Historians still argue whether such beliefs genuinely influenced samurai behavior or were merely folklore. But today you carry it as a gentle reminder to tread carefully, both literally and figuratively. As you ascend the slopes, you notice a group of travelers in the distance, merchants moving slowly with wagons, their oxen plodding through the dirt path. You nod politely, and they return the gesture with equal respect. There is a rhythm to human interaction here, one based on mutual acknowledgement and the silent agreements of shared space. Even as a wandering warrior, you are learning that observation is as much about people as it is about the natural world. Understanding movement, intention, and timing extends beyond the battlefield. Finding a suitable flat area near the crest of the hill, you pause to survey the landscape. The valley below stretches wide, dotted with villages, fields, and winding rivers. Sunlight glints off water surfaces,
illuminating the edges of paddies and the roofs of distant houses. The wind carries a faint scent of smoke from village hearths, mingling with wildflowers and the earthy aroma of recently turned soil. You breathe deeply, allowing the vastness of the view to settle into your consciousness. There's a strange clarity in seeing the world from above. Patterns emerge, strategies of movement and positioning reveal themselves, and a sense of quiet mastery begins to take hold, not through force, but through awareness. You begin a series of slow kata with the bokken, letting the movements mirror the undulating slopes and the gentle sway of grasses in the wind. Each step is intentional, each swing deliberate. The wooden sword feels lighter in your hands than yesterday, almost as if it has absorbed some of your energy and is now responding in kind. You notice how your feet sink slightly into the uneven soil, forcing subtle adjustments in balance. Even a minor misstep carries lessons. You correct instinctively, finding the harmony between body, weapon, and terrain that will one day define your martial style. A young boy from the nearby village approaches, curious and tentative. He watches you silently, then asks if he may try a stance. You nod, demonstrating slowly, emphasizing posture and the flow of energy rather than speed or force. He wobbles, laughs, and corrects himself, persistence shining through in small increments. There is a quiet joy in guiding another, in seeing the reflection of your practice in someone else's learning. This mirrors the approach Musashi later described in Go-Rin no Sho. Mastery emerges not only from solitary training, but from engaging with others, observing their patterns and offering guidance when appropriate. As the morning matures into early afternoon, you descend the hillside toward a river valley where farmers work diligently in their fields. You pause to observe them, noting the elegance in their movements, the rhythm of planting, the subtle shifts of weight, the intuitive anticipation of the earth's feedback. There's an unspoken dialogue between human and environment, each gesture practiced, refined, and passed down through generations. It's not unlike the precision required in swordsmanship: repetition, observation, and adaptation. You take a break under the shade of a lone tree beside the river. The water glimmers as it flows past, reflecting sunlight and dancing with the occasional leaf drifting by. You practice footwork in the soft grass, your movements guided by the subtle pull of gravity and the gentle slope beneath your feet. The environment becomes your partner, offering resistance, support, and feedback. A fringe anecdote floats to your mind. In some coastal villages, swordsmen were trained using water currents to develop fluidity and adaptability, imagining that the unpredictable flow of waves could teach lessons about flexibility in combat. Whether literal or metaphorical, the concept resonates today as you move with the rhythm of nature. Later, a traveling monk appears along the riverbank, carrying a small bundle of scrolls and incense. He observes silently, then offers a gentle bow, remarking that mastery is found not in conquest, but in alignment. Body, mind, and environment moving as one. You nod in agreement, recognizing the truth in his words. Historians still debate how much Musashi's philosophical insights were influenced by Zen principles, but moments like this make the connection unmistakable. You allow the wisdom of observation, humility, and patience to sink deeply into your practice. As the sun tilts toward the horizon, painting the valley with golden light, you gather your belongings and prepare for the evening's journey. You leave the riverbank with a sense of quiet accomplishment, not through achievement or victory, but through the gentle accumulation of knowledge and experience. Every step, every swing, every interaction has added a layer of understanding to your growing philosophy. By the time twilight drapes its soft curtain across the hills, you arrive at a small resting place atop a gentle rise, the valley glowing faintly beneath you. You settle beneath a broad tree, the bokken resting across your lap, and close your eyes. The rhythmic hum of insects, The faint rustle of leaves and the distant chatter of villagers become a lullaby, guiding your mind into reflection. Here, in the quiet embrace of the evening, you let the day's lessons settle, knowing that the practice of patience, observation, and alignment will carry you far beyond this hill and into the unfolding chapters of your life.
The morning begins with a soft hush, as if the world itself is holding its breath. You awaken to the delicate glow of the sun filtering through the bamboo groves near your resting place. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of wet soil and pine needles, mingling with the subtle aroma of distant cooking fires from the valley below. You stretch deliberately, acknowledging the lingering tension in your shoulders and calves from yesterday's rigorous practice. Each movement is slow, intentional, and mindful, an acknowledgement that mastery is not found in speed, but in steady, deliberate repetition.
You gather your belongings and start down the winding path toward the low hills beyond the valley. Each footstep presses softly into the earth, leaving transient impressions that the wind and passing creatures will soon erase. Mainstream historical fact: Musashi often traveled long distances on foot, carrying his weapons and minimal provisions, using the journey itself as a form of training. The repetitive motion of walking, combined with constant observation, became as integral to his development as formal dueling or sparring. A quirky tidbit emerges in your mind. In some regions, it was believed that collecting a pebble from each path you walked would bring good fortune in combat. A charming superstition that likely served more as a memory aid for wanderers than anything mystical. Historians still argue whether such customs were widespread or simply the lore of isolated villages. But today, it makes you smile as you adjust your footing along the uneven trail. The valley stretches open before you, rice paddies glistening in the morning sun, small streams winding through the fields like veins carrying life itself. Villagers are already at work, bending in graceful arcs, moving with the kind of rhythm that comes from repetition and intimate familiarity with the land. You pause to observe them, noting the subtle shifts in posture and the ways they adapt to the irregularities of the soil. There's a lesson here about flow and responsiveness, principles that echo directly in the handling of your bokken. Movement, after all, is not just mechanical. It is a conversation between body, mind, and environment. You decide to set up a small practice area near the edge of a field, away from the villagers, but close enough to observe the patterns of life. You begin slow katas, deliberately tracing arcs and steps through the soft earth. The bokken feels heavier than usual in your hands, not burdensome, but alive, almost sentient in the way it responds to subtle shifts in weight and intention. You adjust your stance again and again, refining foot placement, wrist alignment, and the distribution of your body's energy. A bird perches nearby, watching with an intensity that makes you chuckle quietly. Its gaze is unwavering, as though it is silently evaluating your form, a tiny feathered sensei.
Mid-morning, a young swordsman from a nearby village emerges from the trees. He carries his own wooden sword, slightly warped from weather, and his movements are hesitant but eager. He bows, and you return the gesture. You spend time guiding him through slow, deliberate motions, emphasizing alignment, breathing, and mindfulness rather than speed. He falters repeatedly, yet each correction strengthens both his posture and your own understanding. Teaching is a strange kind of practice. As you shape another, you see the gaps in your own technique, the subtleties that might otherwise be overlooked.
The mainstream historical fact here resonates as much from his students as they did from him, refining his philosophy and technique through shared practice.
A quirky observation drifts in. This village believes that a samurai's shadow contains echoes of past battles and the wisdom of ancestors. While you're skeptical, it provides a convenient mental framework. Every movement, every strike, carries traces of history, absorbed through observation, repetition, and reflection. Historians still debate whether Musashi consciously embraced such symbolic practices, or if they were metaphorical guides for contemplation. But today, it gives your mind a quiet narrative to follow as you move. The sun climbs higher, and you adjust your training to account for the changing light and the uneven terrain. Each motion becomes an experiment in adaptation. Footwork across soft soil, swings compensating for slope and hidden roots, balance maintained despite shifting footing. You notice the subtle tension in your own body and release it, refining the integration of mind and motion. There's humor in the tiny mistakes, a stumble here, a wobble there, but the corrections themselves are instructive, reminding you that perfection is an evolving target. By late morning, you pause and sit on a low rock, observing the village life below. The patterns are subtle yet consistent. The rhythm of work, the pauses for water or rest, the delicate interplay of human movement within the natural environment. You breathe in the scent of ripening grain, wildflowers, and sun-warmed soil, letting the sensory details ground you in the present. There's a quiet exhilaration in understanding that mastery is cumulative, built not just in dramatic moments of dueling, but in these small, persistent observations and adjustments. You rise and continue your practice, weaving movements through the tall grasses and along the edges of irrigation ditches. Each swing of the bokken, each pivot and step becomes a meditation on flow, energy, and awareness. The young swordsman joins again, mirroring your motions and gradually improving. You correct him with gentle nudges, offering encouragement, and sometimes a lighthearted comment that makes him laugh. Humor, after all, is another form of teaching. It keeps the mind supple and the body relaxed, even in the midst of serious work. As afternoon approaches, you pause to drink from a clear stream, letting the cool water trickle over your hands and face. The reflection in the water reminds you of your own posture, and you adjust again, integrating the subtleties of balance and movement into your technique. The world is quiet, except for the soft murmur of water, distant animal calls, and the whisper of wind through the trees. In this gentle environment, every motion, every breath, every glance is an opportunity to refine awareness. Evening falls slowly, and you settle beneath a large tree overlooking the valley. The horizon glows faintly with gold and rose, the village below bathed in soft light. You close your eyes briefly, feeling the satisfaction of a day spent in mindful movement and observation. The lessons of rhythm, patience, and harmony are not dramatic, but they are enduring. You tuck your bokken beside you, letting your mind drift in sync with the cooling air, the soft calls of evening birds, and the gentle murmur of the river. Here, in the quiet of the dying light, you feel the subtle shaping of your character, the weaving together of observation, practice, and reflection into the slowly forming legend you are becoming. The day stretches lazily before you, the horizon painted in soft hues of gold and pink as the sun edges its way toward afternoon. You awaken with a gentle awareness of the land around you, the subtle rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, the warm hum of air sliding over stone and soil. Your body still carries the echo of yesterday's movements, a quiet ache that is less discomfort than reminder. You are alive, present, and moving. Each step you take across the soft earth feels deliberate, grounded, carrying the memory of countless miles and hours of practice. Today is not defined by duels or notoriety, but by observation, reflection, and the slow cultivation of mastery in both motion and thought. You wander down a narrow path lined with tall grasses, their blades bending and brushing against your legs as if greeting you. The subtle patterns of light and shadow play across the earth, shifting with the rhythm of the breeze. Mainstream historical fact: Musashi often traveled with minimal provisions, observing both people and environment, learning strategies not only for combat, but for navigation and survival.
Even the most mundane landscapes offered lessons, whether in anticipating a river's current, noting the behavior of animals, or gauging the stability of a slope. A quirky tidbit flits into your mind. Some villages insisted that listening carefully to the flow of water could reveal the intentions of spirits nearby. A superstition that made perfect sense in a world where observation was life itself. Historians still argue whether Musashi consciously applied such beliefs or whether they simply became metaphorical tools for awareness. But today, it feels entirely practical. As you reach a gentle rise overlooking a quiet valley, the patterns of human and natural life unfold beneath you. Farmers bend in unison, rice paddies glinting in the sunlight, small smoke trails curling from distant hearths. The harmony of daily routines is subtle yet profound. Each action is interdependent, balanced with the world around it. You pause, letting the view soak into your mind, your movements still and intentional. This pause is a reminder that even a wandering samurai must observe without immediate action, that understanding precedes movement. You draw your bokken from your shoulder and begin slow, deliberate practice. Each swing, pivot, and step traces the contours of your growing philosophy: balance, patience, adaptability, and awareness. You let your body move almost as if independently, allowing muscle memory to carry the rhythm while your mind observes the world around you. A young boy watches from a distance, curious but hesitant. You beckon him closer and demonstrate a simple stance, emphasizing focus and alignment rather than speed or aggression. He mirrors your movements, faltering occasionally, but his persistence mirrors your own journey. Repetition, reflection, refinement. The sun climbs higher, and you wander toward a small grove where the air is cooler and shaded. Here, the patterns of nature are more intricate. The sway of branches, the delicate rustle of leaves, the hidden insects skittering through the undergrowth. You practice footwork, imagining the subtle challenges of uneven terrain and the necessity of precise balance. The world teaches in whispers, and you have learned to listen. A fringe anecdote comes to mind. In certain regions, samurai were said to practice with weighted scrolls, simulating unseen adversaries. It seems absurd, yet today you see the wisdom in imagining challenges unseen, training awareness and adaptability. Afternoon sails softly across the valley. You pause beside a quiet stream, letting the cool water run over your hands and feet. The reflection in the rippling surface shows not only your posture, but the subtle improvements in balance and form. You consider the cumulative effect of days like this: walking, observing, practicing, teaching, reflecting. Each moment adds depth to your understanding, layers to your skill, and subtlety to your perception of the world. Mastery, you realize, is not flashy. It is composed of these repeated, mindful acts, each small and quiet, yet together shaping a formidable whole. The young boy returns, carrying a small bundle of herbs from the village, curious to continue his lesson. You guide him through a slow kata, emphasizing the flow between movements rather than the final position. Humor punctuates the session: a stumble, a laugh, a gentle teasing correction. These human moments are essential. They remind you that life is not only about perfect execution, but also connection, observation, and humility. Historians still debate how much Musashi valued personal interaction versus solitary training, but today you understand. Both are vital, each informing and strengthening the other. By late afternoon, the sun tilts toward evening, casting long shadows across the valley. You find a quiet perch beneath a sturdy oak, watching the patterns of movement in the fields below. The day has been quiet, productive, reflective. An unremarkable day by most measures, yet profoundly instructive. You tuck the bokken beside you, letting your muscles relax and breathe deeply. The rhythmic hum of insects, the rustle of leaves, and the faint laughter of villagers become a lullaby for your thoughts, a reminder that even in the absence of battle, life provides lessons. Now, as the light softens into twilight, you allow your mind to wander through the events of your journey. The villages, the streams, the hills, the subtle movements of people and nature, and the quiet shaping of skill through observation and repetition. There is comfort in this rhythm, a sense of order and flow that contrasts with the chaotic chapters of your past. And as the stars begin to pierce the deepening sky, you feel the slow satisfaction of accumulated understanding, a calm awareness that growth occurs in these quiet, persistent moments. You lean back, closing your eyes against the soft breeze, letting the day's lessons settle into your bones and mind. The world holds a gentle, constant rhythm, and you are a part of it, a wandering warrior, observer, and student of life. Strength is no longer measured only by victory or defeat, but by presence, patience, and quiet mastery. Tonight, sleep will carry these lessons deeper, allowing them to intertwine with dreams, shaping both body and spirit for whatever tomorrow brings. The wind softens, and your breathing slows. You feel the familiar comfort of exhaustion tempered by satisfaction. The body heavy, yet light with accomplishment. Every swing of the bokken, every step along the winding paths, every quiet observation has led to this moment. Calm, collected, connected. The horizon fades into dusky lavender, and the first stars appear, faint yet steadfast. You take a final deep breath, allowing the night to settle around you. The world is vast, yet intimate, complex, yet simple. You are part of it, moving through it slowly, observing, learning, refining. The path continues, but tonight there is only this gentle pause, this quiet reflection, this steady exhale into the arms of darkness and the promise of sleep. The air grows cooler as night falls, wrapping you in a soft, protective blanket. Your eyelids feel heavy, and the last flickers of sunlight fade, leaving only the soft glow of twilight. The world quiets, the distant hum of life persisting as a gentle background lullaby. You allow your breath to slow, each inhale and exhale syncing with the rhythm of the universe around you. There is no urgency here, no expectation of greatness, only the calm acceptance of the moment. The soft rustle of leaves, the distant call of a night bird, the faint trickle of water from a hidden stream, all converge into a soothing chorus. Your muscles relax further, unwinding the tension that has accompanied days of travel, observation, and practice. You are grounded, centered, and aware, yet free from the pull of responsibility or conflict. The journey of the day settles like gentle sediment at the bottom of a still pond. Every thought drifts lightly, untethered from pressure, allowing you to notice the subtle warmth of the earth beneath you, the slight caress of the breeze, the quiet companionship of your own presence. Memories of the villages, the fields, the streams, and the young swordsman gently flow through your mind, each a soft reminder that mastery and peace are cultivated in small, deliberate steps. As darkness deepens, you feel a slow weight of comfort and safety. You are neither chasing nor fleeing. You are simply existing, breathing, absorbing the quiet rhythm of life. Let your mind drift, gentle and calm, like the surface of a pond kissed by moonlight. The night enfolds you completely, carrying the lessons of today into the soft currents of sleep. Rest here. Let the world fade. Let the stars watch quietly. Let your breath and heartbeat synchronize with the gentle pulse of existence. The path continues, but tonight there is only softness, calm, and ease. Sleep, and let the quiet wisdom of wandering carry you forward. Sweet dreams.